Uncle Scooby. Hi, I'm Scrappy-Doo.
Kill Scrappy. I hated Scrappy-Doo. He drove me crackers.
People are written about, shit, Scrappy-Doo.
Oh my god, I hate this little turd.
Look away, Daphne. We all promised each other that we would never speak of him. Not ever.
Scrappy-Doo. He ruined Scooby-Doo. He's the worst thing ever. God, he was so annoying. We heard it time and time again. We get it. But now, enough time has passed where I have to admit, I don't think he was that bad. I won't deny I can see why people find him annoying, but I think people pick on the little guy a bit too much. I want to dive into what led to this and why he was hated so much. So consider this in defense of video. Back in the late 70s, the Scooby-Doo series was beginning to grow stale, but within its 10 years on Saturday mornings, it was to be expected. You could only run through the same doors and unmask another disgruntled real estate developer so many times until you ask why even bother anymore. To make matters worse, ABC was threatening to cancel the show, and he couldn't rely on Fred Silverman anymore, who greenlit the original series over at CBS and brought the show to ABC, as he was moving to NBC. So Hanna-Barbera had to act fast. If they couldn't find a way to freshen up the series, Scooby was going to be cancelled. The result was a new character, Scooby's feisty little nephew, Scrappy-Doo. Created by Joe Barbera and writer Mark Evanier, the energetic pup with his cries of puppy power made his debut during the 1979 fall season as part of the Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo show. I must point out, this video isn't about the history of how Scrappy was created. In fact, if you're curious about that, I suggest reading Mark Evanier's blog on Scrappy when you're done. It's a very interesting read. Premiering September 22nd, 1979, Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo featured Scooby and the gang and all new mysteries, accompanied by Scoo's pint-sized nephew, who we assume was abandoned by his parents. The idea of giving cartoon characters little sidekick family members is definitely nothing new. Cartoons from the Golden Age were doing it decades prior, but even in 1979, it's interesting that Scrappy arrived around the same time Godzilla had Godzuki, Plastic Man had Baby Plas, and Fangface had Fang Puss. Scrappy's debut in the series is definitely him at his worst. They did play up his annoying and obnoxiousness a little too much, but to be fair, he's a kid, so I can give a little leeway. I think it's also kind of funny how often he gets on Shaggy's nerves. He's just so done here.
Like he is your nephew, Scoop, but I'll get him for this.
But Scrappy isn't the only one to blame here. Unfortunately, it's not a very good season either. Almost every episode is pretty dull and forgettable. And like I said before, it's basically the Scooby-Doo show, but with Scrappy thrown in. It was clear they were running out of ideas. There's a reason why the monsters in this season aren't as well known as the Creeper or the 10,000 Volt Ghost. But there were some inventive ideas, like the opener with the comic book hero turning into a supervillain, and the Sherlock Holmes Westworld-like fantasy. The season finale, Ransom of the Scooby Chief, has these two thugs kidnap Scooby and Shaggy and call Hollywood for a ransom, as Scrappy and his pup gang try to rescue them. Why the hell would they call Hollywood of all places and not Fred, Daphne, and Velma? I don't know. The only highlight in this episode is this one joke, and it does make me laugh.
What was that?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
Scrappy in this season was voiced by HB regular Lenny Weinrib, who Gen Xers might recognize as the voice of HR Pufferstuff and Timer the Cheese Guy. He gives Scrappy this more Brooklyn accent. Lenny butted heads with voice director Gordon Hunt, which would lead to him walking out on the role. The role of Scrappy was taken over by Scooby's voice actor Don Messick, who voiced the puppet all subsequent appearances until 1988. The show was a hit, and Scooby's status as a Saturday morning fave was kept intact, as Scrappy became popular with young audiences. The show shifted focus to him during the next few years, which was the start of the franchise's first overhaul. Fred, Daphne, and Velma were written out of the show completely, which is understandable. They were mostly sidelined during the previous season anyway, and the show now centered on Shaggy and the dogs, as they travel around the Mystery Machine, getting into trouble. Sometimes the boys would run into real monsters, who were pretty much played for laughs. Other times they would be screwing up a job. There was another segment called Scrappy and Yabba-Doo, where Scrappy spends time with another uncle, Yabba-Doo. I usually skip these. So I mentioned before, Scooby isn't Scooby without his mystery-solving formula. It lasted so many years for a reason, but I understand wanting to try something different, and testing to see how much more Scrappy kids would want. Even though I'm not a fan of these shorts, when I was a kid, whenever these aired on Cartoon Network or Kids WB, I'd stick around to watch them until something else came on. And that's the best way to describe them. They're harmless time wasters. The all-new Scooby and Scrappy show / the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries brought back the mystery-solving format for the 80s. Daphne returned to the gang, no longer the ditzy, danger-prone redhead like before. She's now the leader of the gang, as they work for a mystery-solving magazine. This is where I remember Scrappy being more likable. He takes more of a Fred / Velma role, solving the mysteries and helping with clues. So much so that when Fred and Velma made sporadic appearances, they were just kinda there. He definitely matured a lot too, knowing when to run for a monster instead of just naively picking a fight.
Oh, never mind.
His last major role in the series was the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, where he and the gang captured 13 ghosts who were freed from the chest of demons Scooby and Shaggy accidentally let out. They are joined by a warlock, Vincent Van Ghoul, and a huckster orphan named Flim. Now, I don't know about you, but I never liked Flim. I just didn't think he was that funny or charming. His voice kinda grated on me. I feel Scooby fans universally agree Scrappy was tolerable in the series, at least compared to Flim.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey guys, 47 Cartoon Guy here, and welcome to my YouTube membership program. When you join, you can get access to emojis, loyalty badges, members only videos and polls, shoutouts, special thanks, behind the scenes pics, and requests of any Hanna-Barbera or Tom and Jerry special for me to review for the Funtastic Legacy of Hanna-Barbera minisodes. Hope you would consider joining, and if not, thank you for your continued support by watching and sharing anyway. I thank you, and I gotta fly. Scrappy would reappear as one of the main characters in the Scooby-Doo TV movies that were part of the Hanna-Barbera Superstars 10 in the 80s. He did help out a lot, especially in Boo Brothers, and was less hyperactive, and I don't think he ever says puppy power once in any of those movies. His last appearance was in 1988's Scooby-Doo and a Reluctant Werewolf. And that was the last of Scrappy. He obviously couldn't appear in a pup named Scooby-Doo. He wasn't seen or mentioned in the TV movie Arabian Nights, and as we entered the 90s, we started to see him less and less, save for a few bits of merchandise here and there. The only regular presence he had was in the comics, most notably ones released by Archie Comics in 1995. Here he's a recurring character, solving mysteries with the gang like old times. But now he's a bit more arrogant, violent, and obnoxious than before. And he's also a bit of a hustler. Once Time Warner took over Turner / Hanna-Barbera, the Scooby-Doo comics now had a home at DC Comics, where they remain to this day. Scrappy was the star of his own issue of the Cartoon Network Presents line. Side note, I have tons of nostalgia for these old Cartoon Network comics. It brings me back to being a kid where I read anything I could get my hands on, and I love imagining I'm hearing the voices of the characters as I read. Anyway, in this story, Scrappy was to solve mysteries, but Scooby and Shaggy are too tired, so Scrappy drags a pizza boy to solve a case after he initially scoffed at the young pup. I love the expressive artwork here. It's not like now where they recycle stock poses and call it a day. Every drawing is new. I also like how they acknowledge how much hate the character gets from Gen Xers. Remember that, cause that'll be important later. Also, I love this little detail of Scrappy calling Shaggy Uncle Shaggy, something he never did in the cartoons. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but it's pretty sweet. So something happened by the late 90s. Well, two things. One, the internet came out. And two, Scrappy started to get a lot of hate out of nowhere, with chat rooms, messenger boards, and fan sites all dedicated to hating the poor little pup. The more vocal of the Scrappy haters were Gen Xers. The first generation to have grown up with Scooby-Doo were now getting older, and because of that, innocence and wholesomeness was out, and snarkiness, cynicism, and edginess was in. It was part of the culture at the time. Yeah, fuck Scrappy-Doo. It's cool to hate things, and I'm cool. A similar situation would be, remember the over-the-top hatred of Barney the dinosaur? It was mostly from Gen Xers. Barney was so popular in the early 90s, he briefly dethroned Sesame Street as the #1 children's show on PBS, which didn't take too kindly to the crowd who grew up with Sesame Street in the 70s and 80s. There was also the feeling of being super protective of something you grew up with, where any new iteration would be seen as sacrilegious. For example, we all know how passionate Star Wars fans, especially Gen X Star Wars fans, get. Well, most of them feel that Scrappy ruined Scooby-Doo the same way they feel that the prequels ruined Star Wars. Also, Scrappy was a reminder that they were growing up. We all remember what we were like as shithead teens, and some of us don't like the fact that something that was once ours is now for a new generation, or the fact that we have nothing in common with said new generation. The same could be said for us millennials. I remember being a teen in high school and it was cool to make fun of Justin Bieber or Twilight. Remember how Rebecca Black's Friday was seen as the worst thing ever? Even though it's hardly any different from whatever pop music that was on the radio in 2011. 2013 saw the debut of Go, and fans of the 2003 series were not having it. Not to mention whenever there's a remake or an adaptation coming out, you can bet there was a comment under the trailer saying it ruined their childhood. And I was no better. I'd mocked all these things too, but I was also a shithead teenager afraid of growing up and also wanted to follow the crowd. Of course there's some genuine complaints like Scrappy taking over the series, but I also think some of the hate is kind of forced now. As the hate gotten bigger, Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers started to get in on the act. Cartoon Network had a couple of productions that featured Scrappy. One was a Scooby-Doo project, and the other was a Scrappy Loses It commercial from 2001. And I have to admit, looking back, these were the only times I ever found the anti-Scrappy-Doo jokes funny. I love how hilariously mean-spirited the former is, with the gang just up and leaving Scrappy in the woods when they get annoyed by him, and in the Scrappy Loses It promo, Scrappy goes off on the cartoons because he's jealous of all the attention they get. There's another layer to this joke. Around this time, more C and original programming was airing on the channel, while the classic cartoons started to get shafted to Boomerang, which explains why Scrappy is super bitter here. Warner, on the other hand, likes pretending he doesn't exist, like not mentioning him at all whenever one of the 80s films were re-released on video, or writing him out completely in revivals of productions where he had a major role.
Well, I guess the gang's all here.
Except Scrappy.
What's a Scrappy?
Ha ha, very funny, motherfucker.
And other times it's just cheap shots. To be fair to Warner, sometimes they showed a little love to Scrappy. On one of the many DVD compilations, he was given his own music video performed by Scott Ennis, his current voice actor. Sometimes he showed up in DVD featurettes and CD-ROM games, and in one surprising move in 2015, Warner Brothers released the first season of Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo on DVD, ironic considering how much they avoided him in the past. The whole Scrappy is a villain joke confused me, mainly with the 2002 live-action film. You know my love-hate relationship with this movie, and while I do love it for nostalgia, I'll be the first to admit it's a mess. But when there's too many cooks in the kitchen and a push to make the movie more kid-friendly as opposed to adult spoof, that would be the reality of the situation. Like I said, I was 9 years old when I first saw this movie, and I wasn't in on the joke, and I'm sure other kids my age weren't either. We were just confused why the well-meaning but rambunctious pup we watched on TV was suddenly acting so antagonistic towards the gang, even wanting to fight his Uncle Scooby, who he idolized so much. Well, this came from writer James Gunn, who of course was a Gen Xer who grew up with Scooby in the 70s and 80s. He hated Scrappy, but he didn't realize until after the fact how popular he was with little kids. The funny thing is, he wasn't even supposed to be the villain. The initial antagonist was supposed to be Old Man Smithers from the beginning, and one of the earlier drafts had Don Knotts as the culprit, which would have been hilarious. In the Scooby-Doo team-up comic, Crisis on Infinite Scoobies, Scrappy makes a cameo as a villain, as well as his other two variants. However, it turns out it was a scheme by several recurring Scooby characters, like Vincent Van Ghoul, Red Herring, and the Hex Girls, plotting revenge on Mystery Inc. because they aren't as popular and no one remembers them. Which doesn't make sense. You're telling me no one remembers the Hex Girls? Recently, in the series finale of Velma, Scrappy is a villain yet again, though he may be a hero depending how you look at it. I haven't watched the second season of Velma, nor do I plan to, but judging by the clips I saw, apparently he's this lab experiment created by the military, and he went rogue and started killing people all of a sudden, and do you really care? Do you really? I guess he does kill Velma, so that's one positive. Honestly, I was hesitant to make this video to begin with. I feel like there's so many videos of people defending Scrappy, I don't know how much I would add. I think maybe pointing out the generations of fans and how they feel about the character might be something new to talk about. And also, why do we feel the need to hate something that's admittedly harmless? After all, I see several Gen Z people talk about how they love Scrappy and confused on the hate he got. Without Scrappy, Scooby would have fallen into obscurity, and a franchise we know today would cease to exist. And yeah, I can't in good conscience say Scrappy is the most annoying cartoon character ever when these exist. Hell, I can think of other characters in the Scooby franchise more annoying than Scrappy. Bottom line, I think he should be brought back, and maybe reinvent the character. If they can make Flim Flam of all people likable, I know they can do the same with Scrappy. But what do you think? Do you guys like Scrappy? Do you hate him? Or how would you revive the character? Leave your ideas in the comments. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon for more updates. Coming up next, after another compilation vid, we're gonna take a trip to 1999 and visit the first network for kids, Nickelodeon.